Is Israel winning or losing? Let me just put it to you that way.
Well, the question is, are you looking at the tactical aspect or the strategic aspect? Tactically, we discovered that we have here a generation of heroes, amazing generation of young Israelis that are there's no words to describe their heroism, their connection to their identity, they will power, and the ability to put everything behind, to be the leaders of the next, to be our next leaders of Eretz Israel, and because we are the chosen people, we are the people of God. I have no doubt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty, did not bring us back after 2,000 years to the promised land as a joke, to throw us back to the exile. We're going to win this war simply because we are who we are, and we have this generation to take over from here. Okay, so so tactically, this generation of heroes is having tremendous achievements in Gaza. They call achievements that we achieve with a lot of blood and high payment. We bearing a lot of our soldiers every day. Don't lead us to a strategic victory, and the reason is because the previous generation, the generation of Oslo, generation that was created above the concept of the Oslo process. 30 years of the Oslo process, exactly 30 years right now, created a generation and a layer of leadership. You could not get into a national leading position, not in the army, not in politics, not in the media, not anywhere, if you were not obeying, totally obeying the Oslo concepts. So you have here a layer of leaders that simply don't want to win the war, because winning the war means to take over Gaza and to rebuild Gush Katif, and to flourish the whole land as a part of the state of the land of Israel, which what it is. Okay, the Gaza Strip is the seashore of the seashore of the western part of the Negev. Hey, there's no argument about it. It's part of Eretz Israel. Okay.
There was I was just at a class that showed the Jewish connections to Gaza. For example, there's a synagogue there from the 5th century that has mosaic with King David on it. This is in Gaza City. Gaza City Mosque has Jewish signs on it that they've only removed in the 80s, and there was probably a synagogue beforehand.
There was a majority of Jews and Christians, by the way, in Gaza until the 17th century. Most of the Arabs in Gaza are refugees of 48, by the way, or 1948. However, real victory, like the kind I'm talking about, and that is the only definition of victory. There's nothing to do about it. Victory means take over the land. It's yours. We're not fighting there for self-defense. We're fighting there for justice. But the Oslo process took out the word justice and victory out of the lexicon, out of
our lexicon, out of the Jewish lexicon,
our lexicon. Yes,
right. The other side can say justice and victory all day.
So this layer of leaders cannot allow themselves a victory in Gaza. Why? Because taking over this, we conquered what's ours, the Gaza Strip, means the end of Oslo, of course. So there's the end of Oslo concept. And their whole hegemony of a generation of leaders leans on that concept. It's the end of their leadership. So they looked for a definition of victory for 3 weeks before they went in after these horrors. They were dealing with what's going to be the definition of what's the aim, what the goal of that war. And they said, eliminate Hamas, not destroy Gaza, not recapture Gaza, but eliminate Hamas. Now this is nonsense. Every Hamas, every house in Gaza is an outpost of Hamas army. You have. I mean, there is no Hamas and a population and civilians that are not involved. There is not such a thing. Okay, whoever is willing to open their eyes understand that the enemy is the Gaza people. There were kids going into Nachal Oz and Kibbutz Be'eri. They gave the match to a kid 6 years old. Bechavod. Be honored. Chinuch. You have to educate the young generation. So a little kid, 6 years old, is getting the match to burn people alive in their homes. What are you talking about? Eliminate Hamas. You have here an enemy that you have to fight, just as the Americans fight the Japanese. They didn't say that the Japanese an enemy is the Japanese army. Japan is was the enemy, right? And no one left any humanitarian aid in Nagasaki or Hiroshima or any other Japanese city that was burned to ashes. You have here a total war against a total enemy that totally, including all the parts of its society, is looking to do to you exactly what he did. It's not a theory anymore.
Okay. Although Moshe, there are a lot of Gazans that we see in the videos. Once they get captured, they say we hate Hamas. The Hamas has destroyed our this land, and I mean there are many who say we're not part of this thing. I just want to be clear. In Judea and Samaria, according to polls, 80% of Arabs living in Judea and Samaria say that they support the 7th of October massacre, and we've seen videos. It's just like you said, of children and the whole society supporting the kidnapping and being a crowd gathering around these cars and celebrating the kidnapped. But there are people who are against it. There are people who want to be residents of Israel in the future, who would swear allegiance to Israel. I think that there are some post-jihad Arabs out there, but they are either very few, or they're subdued by the jihadists who are very, very violent, of course.
Well, they declared that they are a nation, right? That's what they declare. I disagree, by the way, but and it's important to understand what they are. But they're definitely what I do agree with them is that they are not individuals. They're not just individual. They're not tourists that surprisingly landed over there. There are a group of people. It's a good question what they are, but they're not the individual. And we are a nation. And they declared a national war on us. We're not dealing here with individual. It's a so-called nation, lo am, as it mentioned in the Bible. We have here a national war, and it's a total national war. And this asymmetrical war that we took upon us, that we will look at them as individuals and look at them as criminals and take them to court. is this ridiculous idea of taking these Hamas people who murdered and slaughtered and raped and were to courts with lawyers to prove what they. I mean, this is. You have to decide: are you in a war or in a criminal situation? What are you dealing with here? So we're dealing here with a national war, okay, not with individual war. That is obvious, unless you totally out of your mind. And unfortunately, there are some parts in Israel totally lost their mind. Okay.
Well, let's talk about that.
One minute. So this group of people, so-called nation, had an election, and they voted dramatically for Hamas, and they standing as a group behind Hamas. And if 80% in Judea and Samaria supporting Hamas, you can just imagine how many of them. What was the percentage that support Hamas in the Gaza Strip? And their whole definition, the whole so-called national definition, is not about having their own state. It's about destroying us and killing each one of us and doing to each one of us exactly what they did in Be'eri and Nachal Oz. And they did it to the biggest peacemakers in the world, biggest leftists in the world, biggest atheists in the world. Okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you an example, okay, of what they're after. They're after you because you're a Jew, and it doesn't matter if you think you're good, you're bad, you with them, you against them. What's your views? What's your ideologies? Men, women, they after you because you are Jewish, just as the Nazis, okay? And just as you did not look for the bad Germans and the good Germans when you fought World War II, you cannot do it now if you wish to win. So the Israeli government, unfortunately, because of what I said before, don't have the will to win. And the basic proof for that is the basic goal that they put for the war, the goal of eliminate Hamas. Just imagine that the British people would say in the beginning of World War II, the goal of the war is to eliminate the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, that bombing London. We're not in a war with the Germans. No, they're good people. We in a war only with the pilots of those airplanes that are attacking London right now. This is so unreal what's going on here. Okay, so on one hand, we have this generation of heroes.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, we have the previous generation of Oslo that pulling them back, taking the victory from their hands. They want to win. They want to go further. They want to bring back the glorification, the kavod, the national honor. And the previous generation of Oslo, the leaders that came out of that generation, are pulling them back to the concepts of the 6th of October.
Okay, so we've talked, Moshe Feiglin. We've talked about the Oslo generation. We've talked about the new generation. We've also talked about the jihadists and the Gazans and the war of societies instead of individuals, not criminal, but jihad ideology, Nazi-like ideology against Israel, which permeates Arab society in Gaza and Judea and Samaria. But there's one more player, which is a lot of people don't understand this player's actions, and that's the United States. And it's a tricky player. And let me put it to you this way. I have a good friend who told me that congressmen are telling him, why don't you guys come out more against what Biden is doing to, what the administration is doing to? Why don't you guys make a bigger noise about that? Because if you made a bigger noise about that, we could back you up. We could say, hey, this is hurting Israel, forcing Israel, and you wrote about this in an incredible tweet, forcing Israel to give all this medicine and food to our enemies in a time of war, forcing us to give the electricity and water in this time of war, not attacking with all of our strength, not preemptively attacking Hezbollah, and the list goes on. All kinds of limitations. Now it's gone even further. Now this most egregious act, which is to pick Israeli citizens, right, and to freeze their bank accounts, because if anybody does business with these four citizens, then that bank, let's say Bank Leumi in this case, will have their assets frozen by an executive order. So, and I was thinking about this, Moshe Feiglin, I was thinking, oh my God, Israel was created to protect the Jewish people, right? The idea is that the state is there to protect the Jews. Now we are being forced, like some kind of capo, to hurt Jews inside of our country because some other country is going to force us to do it. It's like the state has become the capo and we've become the inmates. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I'm trying to make the point.
No, you're not.
Here.
You're not.
Okay, so I was, and I was shocked by this. So I want you to try. I want to ask you to try to explain this player, and the other side of this player. I forgot to say is, right now Israel needs American armament. It needs American support. And America seemingly sent a lot of that support. You know what? The word America is not a right word. It's very important. It's not America. It's this administration, because I think there's more than one America. Just like you said, there's really more than one Israel. So tell me, how are we to see this administration? How are we to see this ally? Whose ally is it? Is it our ally or is it Hamas's ally right now?
Well, you'll be surprised, but I have no complaints against America. If this whole generation I was talking about, the generation of Oslo, for 30 years, is quietly giving the United States of America every piece of its own sovereignty, why would America not take it? Simply take it. We're talking about, okay, because let me tell you something, Yishai. Everybody's talking about the fact Israel needs America and Israel needs the weapons, and there's not enough ammunition. Why isn't there enough ammunition against a terror organization? Israel is stronger economically than ever before. How come the IDF did not prepare in enough stocks of shells, and ammunition? What's going on here? How come there's no tanks? How come what's going on here? Somebody along those 30 years decided that we can lean on American support because there's no two nations over here. There's one, nation, and we are the 51st star on the American flag. And basically what happened was that the Oslo generation, and if you notice, I'm putting the focus back on the Israelis.
Right.
I'll go back to answer the question, yes, but what do you do now? I'm not running away from your question, but I want to put the focus on the real problem. The real problem, and the fact that we don't have munitions now is just one aspect of it, one small aspect of it. The real problem is that this Oslo generation, okay, basically gave up on the Israeli concept, on the Israeli idea, on the idea of a Jewish state in the Middle East. I know it sounds terrible, but that's what it is. The Oslo process was the last attempt to create an Israeli state instead of a Jewish one.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm talking about right now is not from my imagination. It's word by word from Dr. Ron Pundak, who was the architect of Oslo. And Ron Pundak, in the year 2014, when he was asked, this Oslo process that you created brought only bloodshed, so maybe you failed. And he said, I did not fail, because Oslo was not about peace. Oslo was about Israelization of the Israeli society instead of Judaism or Judaization, or if I said it right, of the Israeli society. He put his finger straight on the point. So 30 years ago, the Israelis side of the Jewish, the Israeli people, the Israelis, okay? We're always talking about Israelis against Jews. They're the two sides of the Israeli population, of the Israeli society, those who see themselves as Israelis first and those who see themselves as Jews first. And it's not 50% against 50%. The majority is basically Jewish oriented, but the minority who are those who control all the leading positions. And they decided in the mid-90s to win this discussion that goes on in the Israeli society by force, basically. Use their power by using a geopolitic situation and creating the Oslo process in order to make Israel a civilian state, state of all its citizens, and so on. Israelization of Israel. Now, in 96, they lost only half a year later, they lost the election because the Jewish part thought Netanyahu will destroy these Oslo process, but of course he did not do this. However, and in those 30 years, those Oslo creators and those Oslo leaders saw how this generation of victory, the young generation that grows out of Oslo, losing any hope from their ideals, don't believe in their concepts of peace anymore. They saw all the bloodshed and the bus blows and so on. And they decided that the whole experiment of Jewish state in the Middle East has no future, and give the keys to the Americans. I'm not talking about a process that happened suddenly. It took 30 years, but the bottom line is that the Israeli army has no shells and no bullets to the rifles. Okay, I'm giving it to you. I'm summarizing it. It's a long process. There's a lot to learn of what happened here. So they basically stole the state and gave it to the Americans up to a point. People have to understand that up to a point that Blinken is sitting in the Israeli government discussions in the war cabinet. Blinken is sitting in the war cabinet while they're making decisions. American general is being here in Judea and Samaria and basically working hand to hand together with the chief commander of Judea and Samaria. I'm talking about Fuchs, okay, the Aluf Fuchs. What's Aluf? Major General?
One of the General Central Command.
Yeah. And because of that, we see how they deal with the settlers in Judea and Samaria. And now it's not only the political level and the military level that we gave a full control to the Americans of. Now it's directly at the civilians, okay, with no charges, by the way, against them. Those civilians that their bank account were free, there is no charges against them.
No charges in Israeli court. You're saying there was no.
Yeah, I mean, if Israel is a sovereign state and the American thinks that they did something bad, they can ask Israel, how come you're not taking them to trial? But there's no charges against them. So you passing above the Israeli sovereignty, Israeli justice system, Israeli laws, Israeli police, whatever you name it, and go directly to their heads of those civilians. And that is just the beginning. So we're talking about and all that happens because the Israeli leadership that totally despair from the Israeli experiment, decided to give all parts of Israeli sovereignty through all these years to the Americans. I can talk more and more about it and how the Americans developed it and encourage it to happen. For example, the INSS, I cannot leave this aside, excuse me. The INSS, the most, recognized institute, intelligent institute for
it's an Israeli Defense Institute, but leans heavily to the left, and it's regarded as Israel's intelligence think tank.
The money comes from America. Ex-Israeli generals who sits there understand that in order to be there and of course get the world recognition and I assume many kind of other benefits as well comes from they understand what line of thought they have to be in order to get there, and it's all funded from America. So that's the way it works. That's the way it works for many years. So and the craziest thing is that those generals, most of those generals, as Caroline Glick came out with an amazing news that those top generals do not get into position without an American permission. So in order to be a chief of staff, or even lower than that, part of the
process of acceptance has to be through America.
You have to get the American approval to be a top commander of the Israeli army. This is ridiculous. So those commanders owe their position to the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So what is left in the Israeli sovereignty? So again, I have no complaints to the Americans. You created a state after 2,000 years. You decided to give it as a present to the Americans to do with it whatever they want. And this generation of heroes in Gaza. The bottom line is that this generation of heroes in Gaza giving the blood, not for Israeli interest, but for American interest. And what is the American interest? The American interest is to have a Palestinian state. Forget about the fact this is a total stupidity. There will never be a Palestinian state simply because there is no Palestinian nation. It's not a real nation. Having a state is the last thing they want. If they would wanted a Palestinian state, they would have it 10 times before. Okay, never in the history of mankind a group of people got a chance to get a state and such a help from all the world and did not use it, because simply that's not what they want. They wanted the destruction of your state, of any Jewish sovereignty on any grain of the Holy Land. Okay, so it's not going to happen, but they're going to continue with this game in order to destroy us. So, but the Americans, that's what they want. There are parts of Americans, I hope minor part, that are not looking for the good of Israel. Let's put it in a nice word. Okay, we see it in Europe, we see it in all these progressive demonstration that are in favor with Hamas, and the horrors of the 7th of October don't care about it. Look where we're standing now. The American administration right now is running after the Jews instead of running after Hamas. They freezing Jewish accounts in Israel, and on the other hand, forcing Israel to give Hamas aid and gas. That with that they can continue the war, and the war never ends. So that's the situation right now. Now, back to your question, what can we do? After all, we need that ammunition, and we need that aid, so-called aid that they send us. Well, let me tell you something, Yishai. At the very beginning of that war that never really started, okay? Because when you don't want to win, it's not a war. It's a kind of I don't know. A real war, it's not. Seviv, round, how do you call it? I don't know.
That's right, round. That's right.
Round, another big round. I tried to ring all the bells in Israeli media and saying, I'm afraid. And I said the follow, and people thought I'm crazy. But I think now people start to understand. When the Gerald Ford carrier was on its way to the seashores of Israel, I said, I'm afraid of the Gerald Ford more than Hamas. Not because I think they're going to attack us physically. No. But because of the process we got into right now. It was obvious that the Gerald Ford did not come here because of our interest. It came here because of their interest, and when they felt that interest ended, the American interest, they left. And the answer to your question, what do we do, is to remember what we had here in 1967, before the Six-Day War. All the Arab armies, the Egyptian army, the Syrian army, the Jordanian army, the Iraqi army, okay, gathered together in order to destroy the young 19-year-old Jewish state. America was not with us. There was no one American airplane. We fought with French airplanes. Actually, the Americans put an embargo on the state of Israel in 1948, telling Ben Gurion, if you declare a Jewish state, we're going to put an embargo, and they did. They withdraw from their decision in November 47. So we did not have the Americans. So what we do? We simply realized then, Israel simply realized then, that we have to win, and quickly. And that's what we did. Baruch Hashem, with miracles. But we understood that we cannot fool around with what's going on here. So now you have that situation with Gaza, and you know that you don't have enough shells and ammunition in your army. So what do you decide? You decide to go to a war with the same Oslo concepts that you had before, which means that the war, and you're declaring it's going to take months, maybe even years, when you know that you don't have the ammunition. So when you don't want to win, okay, you're sending your army to another round instead of to win quickly. And when you do that, you need the Americans because you're using a lot of ammunition, and to keep your army going round and round and taking the same places again because of the Americans, you brought back the Arabs from the southern part of Gaza to the northern part of Gaza, and of course they came together with Hamas, and now they took over places that you captured before. Soldiers telling you we're taking over the same places that we did at the beginning of the war. So the bottom line is, if you decide to win, you don't need the Americans. You need the American when you decide not to win. And it's not the American problem, not the Americans to blame, it's the Israelis to blame.
I just want to show you Moshe Feiglin. People are writing in as you're speaking, not coordinated. Edgar writes, this American does not support this administration, this Biden administration. Cheryl writes, this American does not support the Biden administration. I'm Israel Chai. Scott writes, the U.S. administration is the most evil and corrupt regime in history. This American does not support them. It was like out of nowhere, people are writing almost the same words to just show that they are not with it. There's a lot of good people that are with Israel.
Just imagine. I know. It's important that people are saying that. Just imagine an Israeli prime minister that talking directly to the people of America and telling the people of America, are you with us? Are you really with us?
Right.
There's a war going on here between the chosen people, the people that represents God, okay, and the pure evil, the good against the bad. Which side you take right now? We have to win. The good have to win this war against the bad, against evil. Which side are you at right now? Look what your government is doing. They do not let us win a full victory against these Nazi, Islamo-Nazism evilness that appears in the world right now. Are you with your government or not? If an Israeli prime minister would have done that,
millions of people
would the Biden administration freeze those accounts? But you know what happens instead? Netanyahu is not talking.
By the way, we're talking about
Israel under the Netanyahu government is letting those banks freeze Israeli citizens' accounts.
Moshe Feiglin, we're talking about America, but I just want you to know right now there are people all over the world, including this man, Pushyamitra Shunga, who writes, India, always with Israel. There are people all over the world that are strong with Israel. And thank you for being so strong. Behind you, there's a sign that says Yahadut equals Cherut, which is one of your slogans. Judaism means liberty, means freedom. And I think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about.
I also have here, I have to show you 1 second. I look just like you have a picture of the temple. I also have, look, you see?
That's right. There it is. That's right.
Just to know that you're not the only one who has it. Okay.
Certainly not.
In every home in Gaza that our heroes goes in, there's a picture of Al-Aqsa.
That's right.
And we have to understand that this is a spiritual war between evil and good. What will be the message that comes out of the Holy Land, and specifically from the Temple Mount? Is it going to be the message of evil and death, Islamic evil and death? Or is it going to be the message of freedom and holiness of Judaism? That's the real war. That's why they have that picture on their walls, and each one of us, and I'm happy to see that picture behind you, should have that picture on our wall. And I just want to show you that I don't have it only behind me, I have it only in front of me. Look at that. You see?
There it is. There it is.
There it is. Okay.
And just finally, my friend Moshe Herman writes, Moshe Feiglin speaks the truth as ever. Shalom to both of you. Complete victory will be ours, B'ezrat Hashem. Moshe Feiglin is the chairman of the Zehut Movement and Political Party, former MK, deputy speaker of the Knesset. Moshe Feiglin, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome.
All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show live feed. Thank you so much for being with us. Please connect at yishaifleisher.com. Check out our weekly podcast and our YouTube page, which is doing a lot to bring a lot of messages, including people like Moshe Feiglin, to your homes, to your ears. Sometimes people say to me, from your mouth to God's ears. And I like to say to them, from his mouth to our ears. Let's do that first before the other way. God bless you, folks, wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected, and shalom.